Dodgeball looks ridiculous on purpose. A gym packed with misfits, a villain selling fake motivation like it's a religion, and rubber balls smashing into faces with the confidence of a sport that probably should never have existed. Pirates, wrenches, random legends appearing out of nowhere, and a movie that keeps pushing the madness further until you stop questioning it and just laugh. But underneath all that chaos, the movie is strangely well built. White Goodman feels like he was stitched together from every over-the-top villain in comedy history, then inflated into a walking fitness commercial. The ending everyone remembers almost wasn't the ending at all, and the first version had a twist many fans still have no idea about. And the weirdness didn't stay on screen. One of the dumbest jokes in the movie actually escaped into real life and became real. These are 13 weird facts about Dodgeball, the comedy that looks like complete nonsense and somehow still works as a real underdog story. Stay until the end. The final 2 facts go beyond what most fans know. Number 1. Dodgeball did not begin because Rawson Marshall Thurber suddenly decided he wanted to make a sports movie. It started when he noticed a contradiction that was already everywhere. America keeps selling junk food, fast food, oversized portions, and every kind of easy indulgence it can package. Then at the same time, it worships abs, youth, discipline, and the pressure to look perfect. The culture pushes both messages at once, then acts surprised when people get crushed in the middle. That contradiction became the spark. Thurber has said the book Fast Food Nation helped lock the idea into place. The book focuses on obesity, processed food, and the system built around it. But what really stayed with him was the hypocrisy. One machine feeds people garbage. Another machine shames them for what that garbage does. Put those 2 forces in the same room, and you already have comedy. That is where Dodgeball truly comes from. Not just from dodgeballs, but from the battle between average Joes and Globo Gym. One side sells comfort, laziness, and anti-fitness relief. The other sells sculpted bodies, control, and pure image obsession. They look like opposites, but they are really part of the same system. Then Thurber filtered all of that through the underdog movies he grew up loving. Rocky, The Bad News Bears Revenge of the Nerds, and Stripes Den. That explains why the movie works the way it does. Beneath all the stupidity, the bruises, and people getting blasted in the face with rubber balls, it is still built like a real underdog sports story. That is what gives Dodgeball its edge. It plays like a dumb comedy, but it was born from a culture already acting dumber. Number 2. By the time Dodgeball happened, Ben Stiller had already been circling versions of White Goodman for years. The self-help lunatic, the fitness bully, the man drowning in ego while pretending to be confidence. All of those traits finally locked together in White Goodman. He was not some random comic creation that appeared out of nowhere. He was the moment several old ideas finally clicked. The clearest early version can be seen in Heavyweights, where Stiller played Tony Perkis. Put Tony Perkis and White Goodman side by side, and the bloodline is obvious. Both are fitness tyrants. Both run on control, public confidence, and private insecurity. Both talk like they are helping people while somehow making everyone around them feel worse. Heavyweights gave Stiller the first major chance to explore that type of character. Dodgeball sharpened it into something bigger, meaner, and funnier. Stiller later joked that Tony Perkis and White Goodman were probably related, basically cousins in the same deranged fitness family. The joke works because it feels true. White Goodman never feels like a completely new invention. He feels like a more polished, more vain, and more dangerous evolution of a character Stiller had already been building for years. But he is not just Tony Perkis with better lighting. There is sketch comedy DNA in him too. Stiller had spent years mocking macho performance, fake confidence, and men who wear motivation like a costume. White Goodman feels like all of that got concentrated into one character, and then dropped inside Globo Gym with no adult supervision. He is ridiculous, but never random. He feels like the kind of man who mistakes image for strength and motivation for power, then keeps talking until everyone in the room has to live inside his delusion with him. By the time White Goodman appears, Stiller is not inventing a villain. He is unleashing the final version of one he had been quietly building for years. Number 3. Before Dodgeball ever cast him, Justin Long was already living inside Rawson Marshall Thurber's head. That awkward energy, the slightly panicked expression, the feeling that disaster could happen around him at any second. Thurber first noticed Long after watching Galaxy Quest. Long only had a small role there, but it was enough. Thurber laughed, noticed how much attention the young actor was stealing with limited screen time, and never forgot it. So when Dodgeball came together, Long was not just another actor being considered. Thurber wrote the role specifically for him. He liked that nerdy, eager, slightly overwhelmed vibe so much that he built it directly into the script. He even named the character Justin after Long, which shows how specific the vision already was. He was not chasing a general type. He was chasing one actor. The studio pushed back. Their issue was simple. Long was 25, and they thought he was too old to play a high school student. That kind of note usually kills a casting idea immediately. Thurber refused to let it die. He kept fighting for it, brought in an audition tape, pushed through a strong table read, and eventually convinced the studio to approve the casting. His persistence paid off. The role needed someone who could feel young without forcing it, awkward without begging for sympathy, and funny without trying too hard. Long hits that balance instantly. He feels like the one person in the movie least prepared for everything about to happen to him, which is exactly why he works. So the casting does not feel like luck. It feels precise. Dodgeball did not discover Justin Long after he became famous. It caught him at the exact moment one director spotted something early, trusted the instinct, and refused to let go. Number 4. One reason Dodgeball works so well is that the game never feels soft. When somebody gets drilled by a ball, you believe it. Players look exhausted, shaken, and genuinely miserable at times. That texture did not come from editing alone. The cast was pushed into the sport hard enough that the comedy started picking up real punishment. Before filming even began, they had to train. Not the fake kind where actors hold a ball, laugh, and pretend they learned the rules. Real drills, several times a week. Running, throwing, ducking, recovering, then doing it again until the whole thing stopped feeling goofy and started looking brutal. Ben Stiller later said Dodgeball hit much harder than anyone expected. As a kid, the game feels chaotic and harmless. As an adult, especially nearing 40, it turns into sprinting, stopping, throwing, ducking, standing back up, and realizing your lungs are already finished after a few minutes. That exhaustion helped the movie. By the time cameras rolled, nobody wanted to be the one who looked fake, especially with extras watching and tournament scenes designed to feel public and humiliating. So the cast leaned into it. Balls flew harder. Players moved faster. Scenes stopped feeling like actors politely pretending to play a schoolyard game and started feeling like people trying not to get destroyed in front of a crowd. Then the injuries started. Christine Taylor became the clearest example of how quickly funny can turn painful. During production, Stiller accidentally hit her in the face with a dodgeball twice, once during training, and once again during the final match scenes. On camera, that kind of impact fits perfectly. Off camera, it landed very differently. Stiller later admitted there is no graceful way to hit your wife in the face with a ball and make everyone feel normal about it afterward. Justin Long got roughed up too. One heavy dodgeball sequence reportedly left him slightly concussed, enough that people on set did not want him driving home. Then came the wrench. Rip Torn was supposed to throw a safer rubber wrench, but it still came in hard enough to split Long's eyebrow open. That is why the physical comedy feels different from many polished sports spoofs. Dodgeball keeps telling you, this is a stupid game that hurts. Behind the scenes, the cast proved it. Number 5. One of the funniest little collisions in Dodgeball is that Ben Stiller and Christine Taylor were not just playing enemies on screen. They were a real-life married couple trying to survive the chaos of production. And in one scene, Taylor could barely get through it because her husband was too funny. The clearest example was White Goodman trying to seduce Kate. Those scenes work because White is completely delusional. He is so certain of his own charm that every line lands like a fresh humiliation. The problem was Taylor kept breaking character. She later said one of those moments took around 20 takes because she could not stop laughing. The mustache only made it worse. Stiller was not fooling around either. He was fully committed, playing White's creepy sincerity completely straight, which somehow made everything even funnier. But that was only half the story. While filming Dodgeball, Stiller and Taylor were also raising a very young child at home. So the movie's huge, loud, silly energy was being built by two actors running on almost no sleep. Taylor later said she would sometimes fall asleep between takes. Once you know that, the whole production feels different. On screen, it is bright colors, dodgeballs, and gym insanity. Off screen, it was two exhausted parents trying to survive a major studio comedy. That is what makes the story stick. Behind one of Dodgeball's funniest running gags was a real couple bringing their chemistry, their exhaustion, and their timing directly into the madness of the movie. Number 6. When Alan Tudyk first read the Dodgeball script, there was one part he did not trust at all. Steve the Pirate. He liked the script. He understood the tone. He could feel the movie working almost everywhere else. But that character kept standing out like the one joke that might drag the entire film down. In fact, he even told his agent that if they removed the pirate, the movie would probably be a hit. Then he walked into auditions, and the room started changing his mind. Too many talented actors were competing for the same role. If that many people were taking Steve seriously, maybe the part was not broken. Maybe he was the one seeing it wrong. So he stopped resisting the joke. And the thing that finally unlocked it was not the first audition. It was the callback. Tudyk was paired with Vince Vaughn, and the scene leaned heavily on improvisation. That was when Steve finally came alive. Tudyk realized the role could never work if he played it like a wink to the audience. Steve could not behave like he knew he was ridiculous. He had to speak as if everything about being a pirate was completely normal. Pirate words had to land the same way anyone else would say, yeah, or okay. So when the team started throwing around ideas for saving the gym, Tudyk improvised that they should go catch whales for oil and sell it. That moment reportedly helped win him the part. Once he started playing Steve that way, the joke completely changed. He stopped feeling like a random man in a costume and started feeling like someone who had fully built his life around this identity and never once considered backing out of it. Then, fans did something even stranger. They tried to explain him. One popular theory claimed Steve might be a former Navy man using the pirate persona as a coping mechanism. People pointed to the tattoos, the quiet drifting, and the fact that he never drops character. Tudyk has acknowledged hearing the theory while being careful not to turn real trauma into a joke. That shows how far the performance went. Steve the Pirate began as the character Tudyk wanted removed. Then he became so fully realized that fans started inventing an entire wounded backstory underneath the joke. Number 7. You hear young Patches O'Houlihan. Then you hear old Patches O'Houlihan, and they do not sound like the same man at all. In a normal movie, that would feel like a mistake. In Dodgeball, it somehow feels perfect. Patches is not treated like a carefully protected character with one clean biography. He feels more like a sports myth that has already been retold too many times by people who all remember him differently. That begins with Hank Azaria. When he played the younger Patches in the training video, he was not trying to create some careful vocal bridge to Rip Torn. He approached the role from a completely different angle. Azaria later described it as part young Rip Torn, part bad Clark Gable impression. It was never about realism. It was swagger, cheese, and fake old-school sports legend energy. Then the movie got even funnier. At the time Azaria filmed his scenes, Rip Torn had not shot his material yet. So, someone floated the idea that Torn might match Azaria's voice. The whole concept sounded absurd. Nobody was going to walk up to Rip Torn and ask him to change the way he spoke just to line up with Hank Azaria doing a loose movie star impression. That was never happening. So the film ends up with two versions of Patches connected more by attitude than continuity. Azaria gives you the polished training video relic, full of macho confidence and fake authority. Rip Torn arrives later with that rough, cracked, unmistakable voice and bulldozes straight through the idea of matching anything. And honestly, that is the win. Patches stops feeling like one man played at two ages. He starts feeling like a ridiculous American sports legend, the kind of figure whose story has been told so many times that nobody even agrees on how he sounded anymore. Number 8. You still remember that shot. The match is total chaos, bodies flying everywhere, players screaming. Then the camera cuts to Chuck Norris. He gives one tiny thumbs up, and somehow the whole game feels finished, like the universe itself just made the final decision. Getting him there was harder than the scene makes it look. Norris was in Los Angeles while the movie was filming in Long Beach, and at first, he did not want to make the trip. For a cameo that short, a long drive was not exactly appealing. So the production suddenly had to solve one of the dumbest problems imaginable. How do you get Chuck Norris to show up for 2 seconds? Ben Stiller kept pushing. Eventually, the solution turned into pure Hollywood absurdity. They sent a helicopter for him. Norris flew in, shot the scene, and left. He had not even read the full script. He did not need to. The movie was not asking for dialogue or character development. It needed one look, one gesture, and one burst of absolute certainty powerful enough to feel like the entire match had just been judged by a higher power. That is exactly what he delivered. The scene works because the movie knows when to stop. It cuts to Chuck Norris, lets the legend do all the heavy lifting, and gets out before the joke has time to wear thin. Norris was later surprised by how far the bit went, especially after seeing the finished movie and realizing the end credits included one final profane salute to him. That tiny cameo feels different now. It became a perfect little time capsule of the thing Chuck Norris did better than almost anyone else: walk on screen for a moment and somehow make the whole scene belong to him. Number 9. Everybody remembers the ending DodgeBall finally chose. Peter wins the sudden death match. White Goodman loses. Average Joe's saves the gym. The underdogs get their victory. The villain gets humiliated, and the movie lands exactly where a studio sports comedy is expected to land. But that was not Rawson Marshall Thurber's original ending. His first version was much darker. The Purple Cobras win. Average Joe's loses. Then the movie simply cuts to black. No miracle comeback, no emotional reward, no last-second triumph, just your heroes failed. Go home. And Thurber liked it that way. It matched the mean little grin the movie had been hiding the entire time. It played more like Rocky or the Bad News Bears. Sometimes you do not get the win. The problem was test audiences hated it. For a broad comedy, that ending did not feel clever or bold. It felt disappointing. So the studio pushed for a new finish. That is the version most people know today. Fox reportedly demanded a reshoot. Thurber became furious enough to walk away for a while, then eventually returned and filmed the happier ending. But this is where the story gets stranger. The final version was not some tiny patch job. It needed a full sudden death sequence, new blocking, fresh physical gags, a major White Goodman payoff, and even the Average Joe's commercial that helps close the film. That is a lot to rebuild for something often described like a quick fix, which makes the whole story feel oddly perfect for DodgeBall itself. Hollywood rewrote the ending, then handed audiences the rewrite like it had always been the plan. Even the ending could not commit to being just one thing. Number 10. DodgeBall was never some tiny comedy that quietly slipped by. It was a hit. Made for around $20 million, the film went on to earn roughly $168 million worldwide. The audience verdict was clear. People showed up, and the movie delivered. The strange part came afterward. Award groups could not seem to decide whether DodgeBall was a success they should celebrate or something they were supposed to mock. It received an ESPY nomination for Best Sports Movie. Ben Stiller won the MTV Movie Award for Best Villain as White Goodman. And on the opposite side of the room, the movie also picked up a Razzie nomination, once again aimed at Stiller. That split perfectly captures what DodgeBall was. Some people saw a sharp, endlessly quotable underdog comedy with a villain large enough to steal the entire movie. Others looked at the exact same film and treated it like loud stupidity that somehow got out of control. Time helped its reputation. Later, Rotten Tomatoes described it as a worthy spiritual successor to the goofy comedies of the 1980s. Honestly, that may be the most accurate description possible. DodgeBall was never trying to be elegant. It was trying to be funny enough to survive everyone who thought they were too smart for it. And somehow, it did. Number 11. Some movies leave behind quotes. DodgeBall left behind a fake TV network that eventually became real. Inside the movie, ESPN8 The Ocho is the perfect joke. It tells you everything instantly. DodgeBall is important enough to be televised, but only on a channel buried so deep in cable history that normal people barely know it exists. The reason the joke works so well is because it was built from something real. At the time, ESPN2 was still being pushed with the nickname The Deuce, and Ross and Marshall Thurber followed that logic all the way into absurdity. If Dodgeball was going to air anywhere, it was not stopping at ESPN2. It was not settling for ESPN3. It had to be ESPN8. And once you hear the Ocho, the joke feels complete immediately. The name was ridiculous, but also strangely believable. You could instantly imagine a hidden sports universe living there, full of competitions that technically exist but still sound fake. Then the real world borrowed it. In 2017, ESPN turned the joke into an actual event, rebranding a channel as ESPN8 The Ocho on August 8th and filling it with the exact kind of absurd competitions the movie had implied all along. It did not stop as a one-day stunt either. The concept kept returning, growing into a recurring celebration of strange and barely believable sports. Dodgeball, cornhole, banana ball, and events that sound invented until you actually see them. That was the moment the joke escaped the movie. It stopped being a fake network and became a real sports brand. And that may be the clearest sign of how hard Dodgeball stuck in pop culture. Most comedies get quoted. This one got adopted. Number 12. Years after Dodgeball left theaters, the movie kept hovering in that strange sequel zone. People talked about bringing it back. Rumors surfaced again and again, but nothing ever fully locked into place. And that was probably for the best. Some comedies survive because they were made for one specific moment. Trying to recreate that chaos years later can feel forced. What finally returned was something much smaller and smarter. In 2017, Ben Stiller, Vince Vaughn, Justin Long, and Christine Taylor reunited in character for Play Dodgeball with Ben Stiller. It was not trying to relaunch a franchise or set up a sequel. It simply dropped the cast back into that world for a few minutes and trusted the old rhythm to do the rest. And it worked. The chemistry was still there. The tone was still there. Even Justin Long was thrown back into familiar pain when he got hit with a wrench again. But the reason behind the reunion made it land even better. The short was created for the Ben Stiller Foundation, helping support children around the world with access to education and essential resources. So instead of feeling like Hollywood dragging out an old hit for one more paycheck, it felt like the cast revisiting something people loved for a genuinely useful reason. Ross and Marshall Thurber also returned to direct it, which made the whole thing feel complete. No forced sequel, no bloated comeback, just one quick return that remembered exactly why people liked Dodgeball in the first place. Number 13. Dodgeball lasted because it never apologized for being stupid. That sounds simple, but most comedies fail right there. They get embarrassed by their own jokes. They wink at the audience. They try to seem smarter than the movie they are making. Dodgeball never does that once. It commits all the way. The cast commits, the villain commits, the pain commits. Even the dumbest jokes are played with total sincerity. That full-body commitment gave the movie something most broad comedies never get: a real identity. The pirate, the wrench, the Ocho, Chuck Norris giving a silent thumbs up, Ben Stiller turning White Goodman into one of the great comedy villains of the 2000s. None of it should have lasted. Somehow, all of it did. A movie this dumb should have faded fast. It should have been watched once, laughed at, and forgotten. Instead, people still quote it, still revisit it, and still treat it like one of the defining comedies of its era. That is the strange magic of Dodgeball. Underneath all the nonsense was something rare, a comedy that knew exactly what it was and never flinched. So tell us what you think about these facts, and if there is anything we missed, got wrong, or you remember differently, drop it in the comments. Like the video, subscribe, and we'll keep digging into movies that look disposable and somehow refused to disappear.